Oh, do you like Bill or William better?
It's spelled William, pronounced Bill.
Okay, great. Well, this is, of course, everybody. This is the author of our e-learning textbook, and so I thought it would be good to get to know each other and for you to see Bill and know, where he's coming from and where he's going, and see if he's got any advice. So, Bill, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you live, things like that.
Okay, my background is, I live in Boulder, Colorado now. I grew up in South Alabama and went to school at MIT. And that's where I got involved in this in 1971. You can do the math, figure how long ago that was. I got a job teaching a course in MIT's Adult Education Division. And the course didn't exist. I didn't realize that when I signed the contract to do it. The course started in 2 days, and at that time it took 2 weeks to get anything photocopied. So the course was the course in computer simulation of social systems, things like the spread of fads, the spread of epidemics, diseases, rumors, and so on. And so I said, well, I'll just teach the course by putting materials into the computer, the mainframe computer. My students would go to a teletype terminal and they'd type it out, and it would give them instructions on how to run a little simulation, and then challenge them to change the simulation to make it run better. But I did this not out of brilliance, just out of necessity. I had no way to get materials to them. And it turns out the students, who are all adults, professionals, loved it. And I said, this is really something going on here. And I've been working at this ever since, trying to get it right. I mean, there were just so many things wrong back in those days, but I've kept at it since then.
Well, that's really interesting, and we use social network analysis diagrams about 3 weeks ago to look at our online discussion. So it's quite interesting that your very first experience online was using the equivalent of that with a medical model.
Yeah.
Tell me, where are you now? Did you say you were in Boulder?
Yeah, I'm in Boulder, Colorado, right downtown. If you're familiar, anybody familiar with Boulder, the Pearl Street Mall, I'm 2 blocks from that, between there and the mountains.
You can hear the drums playing then as they're selling their beads and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what do you do now? What do you call, your profession, or are you retired now?
Well, I'm sort of in transition. I'm phasing down the consulting activity, although I still do a good bit of it. Mainly what I do is I work on prototype systems with people. When people have an e-learning mission and they don't have a clue how to accomplish it, I try to help them figure out a way to do the stuff that's never been done before. I mean, a typical thing, we had a client come to us and wanted to teach spiritual values. And I sort of joked, said, you want people down on their knees praying in front of the computer? And they said, well, if that's what it takes.
Wow.
And so we worked on it, and we came up with techniques that people could accomplish those kind of objectives. So I work on a lot of specialty things now. The second thing I'm doing is I'm reawakening a career I tried to achieve back in the 70s. I wanted to be a photographer. And 5 years ago, when I took a sabbatical, just took a year off, I set the goal of learning about photography using e-learning. So I defected to the other side. I became a user of e-learning. And boy, was that a slap in the face. To see it from the learner's perspective really gave me a lot of insight into what it takes to learn a complex human activity. And so that was a lot of fun, and it sort of helped me keep going in the consulting and just applying that. So right now what I'm focusing on is helping people educate themselves, helping people learn how to, the people who are going to lead us in the future are going to have to do a lot of self-education. How do they do that well? I mean, just a simple thing, how do you do a good Google search? That's a hard subject. But to succeed in the future, that's what it's going to take. So I'm working along those lines right now.
Fabulous. We're using your ideas about small reusable learning objects as a way of thinking about capturing the things that we want our learners to learn, and so that's been very helpful. And as you're pointing out, it's not just inside of a CMS or e-learning. It almost has to be, I don't know, what, a way of life, that if you have anything to share with anybody, you need to somehow or another put it together in a way that makes sense.
Exactly.
Well, let me move on to the main topic of today. I'm especially interested in your e-learning textbook, the one that we're using in the course. We really appreciate it. It's got so much practical advice in there that we were able to structure the course completely around it. We reordered some of the chapters, but we're really using every last page of it basically for some purpose. And so can you tell us a little bit, where did it come from? How long did it take to write? How did you come to write it? Did you have any big picture guiding ideas or anything like that, or anything like that that you can share with us?
Yeah, a couple of things. It came out of sort of my life experiences. You asked me how long it took to write it. I don't know, 50 some odd years at the time I wrote it, because a lot of it went back to my early education itself. In the first grade, I have a note that the teacher sent home to my parents saying that Bill is probably retarded. That's the actual word they used. And what I realized is I love learning, but I didn't learn the way they tried to teach me in the classroom. So I've always had to be much of a self-learner myself, and I've really just sort of followed all of this along. The first job I got, I mentioned earlier at MIT teaching this course, there were no materials, there was no guideline, there wasn't any e-learning at that time. We were all just flailing around. And so I really tried to keep at it. And I wrote the book out of self-defense. I kept forgetting all the stuff I'd learned myself. And I said, I've just got to sit down and write this down. And what happened is I wrote it down. The first book was in 1989 or so. It was designing and writing online documentation. And it's just sort of evolved into the current book. So to actually sit down and write it probably took 6 or 8 weeks of writing, but it took just really a lifetime of experience to get the ideas that go in there.
Right. It really shows in the book. It really has the air of realness and of experience of things that work. And like you said, it's probably evolved over time. Do you think you'll be doing any revisions?
No. I may be doing some additional work, but it probably won't be in the form of a book. I mean, I might do a series of YouTube videos or something. But I think the book pretty much stands on its own now, and it'll last for a while, because what I've realized, it's not about the technology. The technology gets really stale, but I've tried to write the book in terms of human experiences you create with the technology, and that technology will evolve, and the kind of experiences will evolve. But the core instructional design you need is going to be the same. So I think it'll last a while longer.
Right. That's sort of the philosophy of the course that we're talking about right now. Yeah. The course is called e-learning in CMS or something like that. And of course, it's kind of ironic that we've just put it online in Angel, and Angel is our CMS that's going away. So I designed it the first time in an obsolete system that we know is obsolete. So the point you're making, the big idea that you're making, is that you and I both have seen technology come and go over 20 or 30 years. It comes in, and I remember when we did everything in authorware, and then you can't even run authorware anymore. Yeah. And it's like that. The killer app will come out, but it won't last forever. It's sort of surprising, So it's not about that. It's about the big ideas that carry through time.
Yeah, it's not about the construction, it's about the architecture, I say, the design. And if the design can be implemented in whatever new technology comes along, and if you think in those terms, you're not going to throw everything away. You're going to have to rebuild a part, but that may be 10 or 20% of the effort if you've got the basic design right.
Well, I think we'll go ahead and start closing down. Do you have any general ideas you want to share, or specific ideas or suggestions for us?
One of the things I would say is I really encourage people to read the book intelligently. That is, you got to bring your part to it. There are a couple of things I'd emphasize. I know that in feedback I've gotten from people that I really want to emphasize about the book. One is there's a secret ingredient throughout, and that is motivation. If you can motivate your learners, you can do everything else wrong and they'll still succeed. And I don't mean by motivation edutainment, making it pretty. I'm talking about making sure that they understand why they're learning these difficult things at every stage. That'll give you the flexibility to deal with the cantankerous media. And I think the other thing I'd really emphasize is don't focus so much on the no and the how-to objectives. People will be able to look that up and find videos on YouTube for that. Focus on the decision-making objectives. How do people make good decisions? How do they create things? That's what you're going to get paid for in the future. And the third thing to look at are the believe and feel kind of objectives. Increasingly, I find people fail in their efforts not because they don't know how, don't have the knowledge. They don't believe it. They don't believe what you're telling them, or they don't feel it's important enough to expend that extra effort. So I take an engineering approach, reverse engineer it. Why are people not succeeding, in their jobs or professions? Why are they not succeeding in follow-up courses? And then say, well, all right, why is that? Is it because they didn't believe what you were telling them in this prerequisite course was important enough to really learn? Then work on that. So target your efforts. You don't have to do everything in the book the first day. Please don't try.
Yeah.
But focus on the things that are really going to make a difference in your situation.
That's fabulous advice. I really appreciate that. Well, I'll put you on the spot and put you into one of the discussions to see if you want to make any comments to anybody to see what we're doing. We pretty typically will take the students are assigned to moderate sections of your book, and so what happens is they read the chapter, prepare something, put it online. Quite often it's in Google Docs, but not necessarily. It could be voice chat, it could be all sorts of things. And then the rest of us pass through and ask questions and comment. And so, you're welcome if you want to make comments in the section that I attached you to, but you're not obliged to do that.
Okay.
This is just, for fun. But I have to tell you, this has been fabulous advice. That you've given us today. I'm going to document this and write it down and use it with this class. And we'll be using your book again in the summer section, and I hope to be teaching this class, if it goes well, twice a year. So you should be seeing a few book sales anyway out of that. Who knows? Anything else? I'm pretty happy. I thought the technology worked well for us.
Yeah.
It seems like the sound's good and the audio's good, and the conversation I thought was good too. So there you go.
Good.
I live in Denver in the summer, so I'll try and get up to Boulder.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
give us a call.
Well, I used to work at Rocky Flats, right down 119. I think I mentioned that to Kit when I emailed. Yeah, so I drove through there many, many times through all those high winds that blow the trucks over. So, Bill, thanks so much again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, you have a good day, okay?
You too. Thanks a lot.
Sure, bye.
Bye-bye.